What if I told you that the vast majority of calls hitting your retail stores, the ones your staff are scrambling to answer while helping in-person customers, don't actually need a human to handle them? I know, it sounds a little crazy, but the data is startlingly clear. Today, we're going to break down exactly why 95% of your retail call volume is not just automatable, but absolutely should be automated. So here's the game plan. First, we'll unpack that big 95% claim and see what calls are actually in there. Then, we'll dive into the critical 5% that still need a person, explore the huge performance gap in AI systems, and wrap up with a clear playbook you can actually use. Let's get right into it. Okay, let's tackle that headline number head-on, the 95% claim. Where in the world does a number like that come from?
95%. Just let that sink in for a second. Think about your daily call volume, your current staffing, all those missed calls. Now imagine that 19 out of every 20 of those calls could be handled perfectly without ever pulling a team member off the sales floor.
Yep, that's the core idea here. 95% of your inbound calls are for things that just don't need human empathy or complex problem solving. And look, this isn't a guess, it's a reality backed up by a ton of data. And this number isn't pulled out of thin air. It comes from a really deep analysis of real-world data. We're talking benchmarks from major players like Freshworks, contact center data from Invoca and Talkdesk, and direct findings from over 15 live retail deployments. This is what the call logs actually tell us. So, what are people calling about? Let's start with the absolute heaviest hitters. We call them the Big Three, and they make up the undisputed core of your daily call volume. And what's really incredible is just how concentrated it is. Just three simple categories. Order status, store hours, and product availability make up roughly 60% of all inbound calls to a typical retailer. That is a massive chunk of your team's time spent on what is basically just information retrieval. So, the number one reason people call you, making up more than a quarter of all calls, is simply, where's my stuff? I mean, this is the very definition of a repetitive task, right? It's just a lookup in your order system. It doesn't require negotiation or creativity, it just requires access to a database. It's the perfect job for an AI. Coming in hot at number 2 is another super simple one. Hey, what time do you close? Or, where are you guys located? Now, this is critical information for your customers, absolutely, but it's totally static. The answer is the same every single time. Having a person answer this is just wildly inefficient when an AI can give that same information instantly, 24/7, even on holidays. And number 3. This is where we start talking about real, tangible, lost revenue. It's the classic, do you have this in stock question? Think about it. It's lunchtime, a customer calls to see if you have their kid's size 11 basketball shoes. Your staff is swamped, nobody picks up. Well, data shows that 85% of people in that exact spot, they don't leave a voicemail, they just hang up and call your competitor. That one missed call just cost you $160. Ouch. So, the Big Three get us to that 60% mark. Now let's look at the other high-volume categories that pushes all the way up to that 95% number. And you know what? The pattern just continues. Appointment and curbside pickup calls make up another 11%, and that's just a simple integration with your scheduling system. Questions about your return policy? That's another 8%, and it's all based on clear, predefined business rules. And pricing and promotions? Another 7%, which is just a lookup of your current sales calendar. You add it all up, and you see how we get there. I want to pause on that 11% for appointments for a sec. This is such a brilliant illustration of how AI moves from being a defensive, cost-saving tool to an offensive, revenue-generating one. Every single appointment that gets booked by an AI that would have otherwise gone to voicemail, that's not just a deflected call, it's recovered revenue. It's literally a sale you would have otherwise lost. Now, this next part is so important. This is not about replacing humans entirely. It is about optimizing them. So let's talk about the 5% of calls where a human is not just better, but they are absolutely necessary. These are the calls that need real judgment, real empathy. We're talking about those complex, weird, one-off situations. A genuinely upset or emotional customer who just needs to feel heard. A multi-step return that requires a manager's approval. Or, say, a B2B inquiry where that relationship is everything. This is where your best people need to be spending all of their time. So the single most important thing is this. For that critical 5%, the handoff from AI to your human agent has to be seamless. A great experience means the AI passes along the entire context of the call, who the customer is, what they've already tried, so the customer never, ever, ever has to repeat themselves. That is the difference between a system that actually helps and one that makes people furious.
Okay, this next part is, I would argue, the most important insight in this entire breakdown. Because the term AI gets thrown around constantly. But the reality is, there is a massive performance gap between different kinds of AI systems.
I just love this analogy. Having your expert staff answer, "Where's my order?" is like using a master chef to make toast. Sure, they can do it, but it is a criminal waste of their talent. The whole point is to free up that talent. But to do that, the AI has to actually, work. And that all comes down to its architecture. So on one side, you've got your basic FAQ-trained AI. This is kind of old tech now. It's trained on a static document, like your website's FAQ page, and it just tries to match keywords. On the other side, you have modern, grounded RAG AI. And all that fancy term means is that it connects directly to your live systems, your real-time product catalog, your order database, your calendar. It doesn't guess, it actually looks things up.
And this chart right here shows you why that difference is everything. Take calls about pricing and promotions. A basic AI might deflect, say, 40% of them, because it's working off an old sales document it was trained on. But a grounded AI, one that can see the flash sale that started this morning, it deflects 75%. That 35-point gap is the difference between a helpful tool and a frustrating dead end for your customer. So this all leads to one really simple but incredibly powerful question that you, as a retail operator, need to ask any AI vendor you're looking at. This one question cuts through all the marketing fluff. This is it. You just ask them, is the AI grounded on my live data, or is it trained on a static snapshot? If they can't give you a clear, confident yes to live data, you are buying a system that is literally designed to fail on the most common questions your customers have.
All right, let's bring this all home. We've looked at the data, we've looked at the tech, so let's talk about the playbook. How does this all translate into real business results?
It really boils down to three huge outcomes. First, drastic cost reduction. You're replacing calls that cost you $7 to $12 a pop with an AI that handles them for about 40 cents. That's a massive saving. Second, new revenue capture. You're turning all those missed calls about product stock and appointment requests into actual booked business. And third, and maybe most importantly, smart staff optimization. You finally free up your best people to focus on those high-value, complex conversations that actually build relationships and grow your business. So the big takeaway is this. The real opportunity here isn't just about getting AI. It's about being strategic. It's about understanding your call volume and applying the right kind of AI to the right 95% of the problem, so your team can absolutely nail the critical 5% that's left. And that isn't just better operations. It's a fundamental competitive advantage.